Time comments from the audience may be made on items not listed on the agenda that are of public interest and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district. The committee has a policy of limiting speakers to not more than 3 minutes. The committee cannot take action on items not listed on the agenda. Public input may be offered on an agenda item when it comes up for discussion and or action. Are there any public comments at this time? No.
No public comments.
Thank you. We'll move to item 4, approval of last month's minutes. Can I get a move to approve? Thank you.
Second.
All right. On any public comments or board comments? And then the CEO report, Chris?
I do not.
I vote yes on the minutes.
Oh, we got to vote it?
Yeah.
Just say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No CEO report on the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to item 6, financial report, starting on page 4.
Yes. My notes start on page 5, if we could go there, please. Thank you. So this will just be our year-to-date profit and loss statement here. So I wanted to highlight a few of these lines, similar in methodology as we did on the district side, taking into consideration that some of the expenses are equally budgeted. The first one I wanted to note was the 4003 grants line, which is currently showing under budget by the 867,000. Part of that, a good deal of that was actually related to a grant that we had from the district to the foundation. When we were preparing the budget last year, we anticipated a $750,000 grant from the district to the foundation that would be usually approved in June and received early in the fiscal year. With that particular item, we were able to bring that in May and was received in June of last year. And so that shifted the receipt from one fiscal year to another. And so that's where the big portion of that shortage is coming from. We've already received the funds. It was just logged from the prior fiscal year. On the 8040 line, same page, please. 8040 line, we're up 58,000 on the unrealized gain for our investments. Similar to what we had on the district side, we utilized a 5-year average for our budget, and our investments are performing better than anticipated. On the expense line on that same page, one item I wanted to point out was under the 5102, the DHCD expenses. One of the elements there contributing to that underage so far is we had budgeted 4 quarterly mobile medical units. And so far this year, we had our first one in December. So that's taken up a portion of that, as well as other events that we've had with US Aging and whatnot. The expenses have been lower than anticipated. And so that's why we're under on that line. And then the other 2 lines we're kind of combining together. The 8051 and 8052 is 2 of our grants lines. 8051 has to do with funds, kind of pass-through funds from other sources. We haven't had as many expenses under that line on the 8051 as we anticipated and prepared for. And then under the 8052, with that particular one, the budget itself, again, is 6 months worth of our total year budget. One of the big elements we just had was the environmental health RFP, which was just under $1 million. And that was offset slightly by a couple grants that we had that came in under their awarded value. And that's reflecting the overage now, but as we move along throughout the year, that will even out. And that's really the main elements I wanted to point to, foundation being quite a bit shorter report on the financial side than we see on the district, but happy to answer any questions there may be.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
5102, we're under by 91,000. Is there a reason why we're so under performing or underutilizing the Eastern
That was one of the items I was noting, because that's where we'll expense the lines for the quarterly mobile units, which we've only had one of the 4. as well as less of the events so far, less
Okay.
expenses related to those events so far.
Very good. Thank you. I didn't hear the number when you were reporting to that. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries.
And Eric, those expenses are just the expenses to host those events, correct?
Yeah,
Or-
we have various expenses for the vaccine events that we're utilizing through like the U.S. Aging Grant, which on that side, some of those expenses will end up being reimbursed and recognized as grant revenue once we
Got
receive
it.
those funds.
Yeah, so the grant would actually fund back this, is that correct?
Yeah.
So it comes from the district back to the foundation. The foundation pays for it, but the grant comes back and fills it in. Great. And then I guess I would like at some point, and again, this is probably offline and maybe it can be brought up at the next meeting, is just what kind of goes into some of these expenses. You know, what can we expect goes into CVEC? Is it just as an example, just the expenses for the events? Is there vehicle maintenance? Like what does the budget look like for that? I would like at some point to go through how we kind of estimate these budgets, and maybe that will come up at some point in the year, and this conversation can be tabled until then. But I would like at some point to be able to kind of look through how these budgets are made and what we can expect goes into each of these line items.
And go ahead, Chris.
And one of the things is in the director orientation packet that you've received, there's the annual budgets that are in there.
Yep.
The very last page of each of the budgets for both the district and the foundation shows some detail as to what goes into some of the major account numbers. So that might be helpful, but then obviously we'll review as you want to sit down with
Sure.
us to take a look at.
Great. I'll start there and then and just kind of work through it. More or less, it's just for information purposes. So
Exactly. So like what you would see on this account 5102, you would see what we budgeted in there is 100,000 for internal expenses related to the collaborative work, which is for our Coachella Valley Equity Collaborative, and then 200,000 we have in there that's for quarterly mobile unit events. And so it's figured at 50,000 per event, but you know, we feel like we have, you know, sufficient monies in there that we may not spend it all, but we wanted to ensure that we didn't short ourselves in the process.
Great. That's excellent. Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. Next item.
Are there any
The only other question that I have on the financial reports is on the page 8, and not really a question, but just a comment. The new column that you added, is this the one that Director Shore had asked for last month? Is that the reason for that column that you added at the end? It's really just the total budget restated, right?
Sorry, which column are you looking
This is
for?
At the very end, it's the numbers that they're just restating from the first column, right? And then at the very end, I was just kind of surprised that we had that thing, but I thought maybe that's what Director Shore had asked for. I know he was asking for clarification on this, but is there a reasoning for that column?
You're talking the very last column?
Yeah.
Is that a column that we didn't have previously?
Correct.
You know what? It may be just that when we selected that page to print that came out, because that's just one of our extra columns to validate that all of the totals are coming up the way that we want it
to check
so
some balances. Okay, very good. Thank you.
It's a check figure, yeah.
Thank you for
Okay,
noting
very
that.
good.
That was oversight on that formatting there.
Thank you. I have no other questions on the financial reports.
Any public comment or other board director comments?
I guess we, just for our new board member, we could just touch on the last page 12. Just to restate the grant dollar amounts available.
So we have deposits. Any comments on deposits, I think? And then what was the one after deposits? Check register. And then page 12, yeah. Okay. Anything there, Eric?
Nope, nothing specific to note. A lot of these will just end up being in that 5102 line that we were talking about related to the, well, in this case, a lot of the women's wellness clinics, which was our first of the mobile medical unit quarterly events.
Right.
And then some of the other expenses related to the U.S. aging vaccination events that we have had.
A lot of times what we do, Director Logsdon, Director Shore, and what we've done before is we just, if we have a question about any of these expenses, sometimes there's none, but sometimes we just have something new that pops up and we'll just ask them to explain it, or if they want, because we know that this is information that's going to be available to the public. Things that we've changed, that we've asked them to include is like if there's an expense, a high dollar amount for food, that what they have done now, and that very helpful to justify that amount, is that it's 10 people or 32 people are attending that. And so that's things that in the past directors have asked about, why is that so high, or what is that about? So we're responsible for questioning the things that we don't understand, or that we would like to have be a little bit clearer for the public to understand.
Thank you.
Mhm.
No questions here. Public comment or board comments?
Hmm.
Okay.
On this page, Eric, if you wouldn't mind just restating those the where we get the 520 that we have available, 528.39.
Yeah, in this particular case, under the foundation itself, we do have some previously designated funds under things such as behavioral health and Avery Trust that we are available to award out of. So at the very bottom, when we're looking at amount budgeted this year, we just put a small amount in anticipation of, potential grant that may need to be funded on the foundation side. So we've got the 10,000, just a minimal amount there. The amount granted year to date, that 997, is reflecting the environmental health RFP that we've awarded, that we had utilized some designated funds for already, some carryover funds from prior years. We have had about 30,000 in funding that didn't end up being utilized from prior awards. So that becomes then available to use as we need. And then factoring in that, where you see that 1.477 million at the very bottom, just above the yellow highlighted line, that is what the value is of carryover funds that we've had. So after all that said and done, for the remainder of the year, on the foundation side, we're looking at 520,000 that is available to grant if we needed to. And then on the left of that, or I'm sorry, the right of that, we do show our social services fund, which we budget, which ends up funding a lot of the nonprofit cancer centers. And I hope I'm saying that correctly, Donna, but we are not spending as much as we have budgeted on that side there, but we do track that separately from our grant funds themselves.
Great. And do we allocate that money every year, Eric, for the social services fund?
Yeah, we've budgeted that each year. Correct.
And then last one question that I have, I see when I look at that yellow number of 520, is that's what's available to grant out? What is the total amount we have committed for this year then? Is that up here? Or do we have a certain amount that we expect to have to pay out this year? I see the open balances and I see the total paid, and I assume there's a difference there, which is the open balance, and that sums up to 2.8 million. Is that something that we have to expect to pay out of this foundation fund this year, the 2.86 million?
Not necessarily. One of the things to consider too in this is, of that $1 million that we talked about with the new environmental health RFP. That's a 2-year program. So
Sure.
those will have systematic payments. So, but that is the open balance of all the funding that we have. We do keep a separate line a little bit lower down where we show the value of the awards and what may be uncommitted for those. So when you see that 1.6 million,
Yep.
that's going to be the total amount that we have available to award. However, some of those categories, such as the behavioral health or the Avery Trust, those have specific limitations on what they could go towards, where looking at, say, the carryover funds, the 480,000, that really could be used for whatever the board approved for grant-wise, where Avery Trust, or the other one has very specific qualifications to fund, but they are available if we did get a grant under that realm.
And if there was a grant that went in to allocate the majority of these funds, would we have to go back to refund some more of this foundation to meet those demands? I don't know. Does that make sense? I mean, would we have to add some money to this foundation to meet those demands if we had to meet the 1.675 million? I don't know if that came clear. I guess I'm looking at not solvency, but is that 1.675, if that was to be committed this year, do we have the funds to meet that currently, or do we have to go back and refund the foundation somehow to do that in the grant program?
Not necessarily, but I did want to note, Donna had her hand raised, and so I was
sure.
If I may, Dr. Logsdon, I just wanted to mention how some of these funds came into being.
Sure.
Our foundation kind of lost its job later on in life, and so we previously, when Royce Does Resource Center was closed, this was back probably about 10, 12 years ago, we had a lot of the commitment that to keep Roy's going, or to keep the homeless shelter going, was commitments from the district and 9 cities. And those cities kind of reneged, because it was 2008 when we had the recession. And so we utilized, the board at that time utilized the foundation as sort of a catch-all to be able to, for initiatives, and bear in mind too, we still didn't have our boundaries. So the foundation was also used for funding for initiatives where we could go outside of the boundary past Cook Street. And we were also looking at it as when we developed these different initiatives, like either the West Valley Homelessness Initiative at the time, Behavioral Health Initiative, was kind of with an idea in the back of our heads to possibly also get other funders to put into this fund. So we would have like a huge collective impact, collaborative type of funding that would impact everything. The West Valley Homelessness Initiative was very successful. We matched any city that would put in 103,000. So that's where that came from. So the Avery Trust was more, and some of these are leftovers from trusts that we got from the hospital. It was a nonprofit. Like the Avery Trust was given to us for somebody that had great pulmonary treatment when they were at Desert Regional Medical Center, when it was still a nonprofit. So it's sort of like the foundation is sort of like more like initiative making, where we can then look at other funding partners and to make a valley-wide impact. That's how this came about. Yeah.
Yeah, because I see on our current assets we have money in our checking account. We obviously don't have 1.6, but we've got money in our investment accounts, Eric, totaling up to maybe 4.1 million. And so those funds would be what we would use if we had a demand on that, correct?
Yeah, we make sure to have all of our obligations in this document covered under there before we determine what was available. And I guess to address your question from earlier,
I think I answered my own question.
Oh,
I just had to go back to the balance sheet. I hadn't dug into it enough, and I see the total current assets. I see what's there, what's committed. So we're fine on that. I just was kind of refreshing myself on the foundation, and I appreciate Donna kind of clarifying the purpose, and I see why the foundation was kind of started and kind of the needs that were there, especially without the expansion of the district. Now that we're out past Cook Street, I think we have a lot more opportunity to use the district funds for that, where I could see the foundation was necessary before. So thank you.
And one thing to look at, Director Logsdon, is I think it's page 8
Yeah,
With the financials, because then that'll show like what we're calling a general fund and then a restricted fund.
Yep.
So that you can see there that when you're talking about solvency, we do have the resources to cover our liabilities.
Yep, I see that now, and I guess I was trying to marry up some of the liabilities, both current and long-term, to what was stated on the second to last page, the 1.675 million, what we have uncommitted and available. I was just trying to connect these two together, and I can do that offline. I was just trying to get some clarification before I dove back into the numbers. So we're good, Eric. I really appreciate Donna and yours clarification on everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board member or community public comments?
I'll move approval of the financials.
So move. Seconded.
All in favor?
Are there
Aye.
any questions from the public or any other questions? Don't forget, Chris.
Well, I had said that when you did the motion, so I already had said that. Director
Okay.
Laura.
Oop.
So,
Any Other
we have a
matters?
motion and a second. Is there all those in favor? Mr. Chair, you want to ask the question?
Aye.
You did.
Oops.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
aye.
I just have one comment on item 7. I just want to say that Director Logsdon, that I appreciate everything, the opportunity to go through the learning curves again. So any questions you ask, I learn from it too. I get reminded. I get the history lesson from Donna. So just know that I really appreciate the questions that you ask, and I look forward to having you ask to again remind me of the things that sometimes I forget that we kind of take for granted. So thank you for
Yeah.
the opportunity to see it through your lens.
Well, thank you for tolerating some newbie style questions here with everybody. I'll try to take most of these offline so I don't spend
We
every.
learn from each other. That's why I think the benefit of having new people coming in, because you're looking at it through a new lens. And so it's good to ask those questions as a group, especially from board members, and that you're not able to ask those questions offline with each other. But I know you'll learn from some of these things from the staff, but some of these questions really should be asked in a group, because you'll learn what mistakes we've learned and what questions we're not asking. So we learn from each other.
Stay tuned to board orientation.
Yes.
I can't wait. Thanks, guys. I'm really looking forward to that. Well, that's it. Anything specific for adjournment that we need to do here?
You just adjourn and say the time.
Adjourned 16:15. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good
See you
day.
later.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.